Gage, and welcome back to another episode of TrekChatz, a first-time Star Trek watch podcast. I'm Alan, and I'm joined as always by the weird teenage gambling son to my weird teenage horny son. It's Magellan.
Oh, I sense an opportunity in this episode to make all of our patrons pay us some gold-pressed Latin.
No.
If I need to hear one more person say gold-pressed Latinum, I will scream.
You're gonna hear it so much more. You're gonna hear it. I think you're not gonna hear it less. You're gonna hear it more often because Cork is so good. Gold-pressed Latin.
It's just so many words for like money.
Gold. Yeah.
I get it. You need to arbitrarily create a currency, and I guess that's just not a thing that like. Because isn't that part of the thing of the original Gene Roddenberry vision of Star Trek is there's like no currency,
or
something like that?
Maybe.
So you can't just do the Star Wars thing of it's credits. Credits is great. You can just say the one word. You don't ever have to show what a credit looks like. It's just credits.
But isn't there this
gold-pressed Latinum? So stupid.
Isn't there this thought though that the Ferengi want there to be a gold standard, and so that's why they keep gold pressed Latinum around, because they're like we can't we don't want to get rid of money because we want to have money. Yeah,
you're right. That's fair.
So if anything,
call it gold, baby.
Yeah. Well, it's sci-fi. They want to be silly about it, but if anything, them calling it gold pressed Latinum and focusing on it so much shows that the Ferengi like really, really strongly hold. Yeah, it says Latinum was deeply engaged in Ferengi culture, references several of their rules of acquisition. So there you go. It matters. It's a Ferengi thing.
All right.
It's also a currency.
Thing. I apologize.
You better. And it's a currency in Star Trek Online as well. When is Chat's getting into STO?
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's forget about this show. We're going to just live stream Star Trek Online right now.
One listener is like,
on the
Yippee!
Latinum server.
Latinum server. Wow. Make sure to send us your Latinum. Anyways, it's TrekChatz. It's a Star Trek podcast. Magellan, what's new in your life? What's exciting? What'd you do? What's the coolest thing that you ate in the past week?
Oh, okay. Coolest thing I ate in the past week. I went to like a Lebanese place yesterday.
Hello?
Got like an eggplant dish. It was delicious.
Nice. Was it garlicky?
It was a little garlicky. There was a chicken dish that had sort of like a garlic foamy butter.
Yeah,
that was good. So
nice.
So some good stuff there. Yeah,
I love that.
This is our second time going there. Our first time going there, when we were leaving, we saw Penn Badgley.
Whoa! Well, from you?
Girlfriend of the podcast, Amanda, saw Penn Badgley from you. Yeah, that's right. He was getting food from the restaurant.
Cool.
But I won't say what the restaurant is because I'm trying to protect Penn Badgley.
And yourself.
And my own self.
Wow, Dan Humphrey himself. Dan Humphrey from Gossip Girl? No? Okay.
I haven't seen Gossip Girl. XOXO.
Amanda and I should do a Gossip Girl podcast. You can come, but it's an Amanda and Elm. I saw a tweet recently that was classic Chatzums joke setup, by the way. I saw a tweet recently. He was like, here are the best podcast dynamics ranked. Like your podcast duos. And it was like bisexual man, straight woman, 2 bisexual women, 1 trans woman and a straight man, 2 straight men, bottom tier. And it didn't include non-binary people, which is unfortunate, but the person who made it is non-binary, so I think it was a bit of a shit post on purpose. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Like most tweets, not worth thinking about beyond the 30 seconds that they sit in your brain. But that's good that you got some fun food. I've been hanging out. Speaking of Mediterranean food, my uncle, who's not from the Mediterranean at all, but is from Europe, from Western Europe, from France, is visiting the family for about a month. So we're hanging out with him, talking about how different, work and hustle culture is in France versus here a lot. This is the second time he's visited since I've moved out, and it's always this sense of like, all right, yes, all we do here is talk about work, and we drive cars, and we eat really heavy meals. Yes, we know. Like, it's not even funny anymore. But I like comedically brought that up, and he was like, I'm here to hang out with my family. Like, I don't care that your country's like stuff
Leave
is
me alone.
weird. Leave me alone.
Funny.
Shout out to him. He's a cool uncle. Anyways, I have another Simpsons update. I still have memes that are like burrowing their way into my head.
Okay.
There's two. There's I just recently was like talking to someone, and I did the it's from Marge versus the Monorail, when Homer is telling her how cool it is to be a monorail conductor, and he's like, "What if I wore a cool hat?" And she's like, "No, that's not cool." And he's like, "What if I talk like this?" I've been saying that a lot. I watched Happy Birthday Magaggy recently, which is that's nothing to do with the episode. It's just a scene at the beginning of an episode where Marge is like, I made a cake for Homer to ruin instead of the one that says Magaggy. And then the one that I had not seen, but I just recently watched is it's like the end of season 4, and it's the one where the Red Hot Chili Peppers come to play at Springfield. That's not the premise of the episode, but that's something that happens in the episode. And I saw a clip, because there's been like a thread on Twitter recently of like, what's the funniest Simpsons joke, period, which is great. It's so rewarding for me to watch that thread evolve. And someone put one up from when they all go up to Moe's Tavern, and they're like, yo, what's up, Mo? And then Flea in the back just goes, hey, Mo! And he's like, it kills me, because apparently on the commentary they said he's recording from a different room because he couldn't do it without yelling. It's just, so in the episode you can tell that Flea is like 20 feet away from the mic. It's amazing.
That's really funny.
So I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Hey, no! Anyway.
Wait, so what, now that you've seen so much Simpsons, what do you think is the best Simpsons joke of all time?
I definitely like Bake 'em Away toys, because it's kind of subtle and quick.
Bake 'em Away toys, so good. Classic.
I recently rediscovered the one from Cape Fear where Bart is running away from Sideshow Bob on the boat, and he goes on one side and sees alligators, goes to the other side and sees Sideshow Bob, and then goes back to the alligators and goes, oh, yeah.
Good.
So yeah, season 4 and season 5 is just like, I think those are at least in like my top 3 right now. But like episode that has the most jokes that I consider best ofs is the one where Homer is with Mindy, the coworker, and he tries to sleep with her, or doesn't try to sleep with her. He tries to not sleep with her. And he's like, oh, this is my stop. And he gets out of the elevator and walks off of the nuclear power plant. Or the guy who in the hotel is like, you guys can, icky, hubba.
And he keeps going.
Yeah. Ugh, those are my favorites. Do you have a favorite?
That's fun. Yeah. Well, my top 2 that I can think of off the top of my head right now are when Burns is touring Homer over through his house, and he's got the room where he's like, and here's 1,000 monkeys working on 1,000 typewriters.
Yeah.
Soon they'll write the next great American novel. And he rips the piece of paper. He says, it was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. You stupid monkey. Which is classic. And then my other favorite is Lisa versus Malibu Stacy, where Lisa's trying to rally the other children. Don't you think there's something wrong with what your Stacys are saying? Because all the Stacys have like pull cords that say sexist things, and then or trad wife things, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then and then
sorry,
one of the kids says,
I'm laughing at the joke you haven't said yet.
One of the kids says, there's something wrong with what my Stacy says, pulls the cord, and it goes, my spidey sense is tingling. Anybody call for a web slinger?
Oh, God.
So funny. So
yeah, sterling gold jokes.
Yeah, those are my 2 faves, but there's plenty of other good ones.
They're all in your noggin somewhere if you dig deep enough.
Yeah.
Those are gold pressed platinum jokes, if you will. Brought it back.
Oi.
I brought it back. Ahoy, hoy.
We're talking about Star Trek Deep Space Nine this week, this time, this month, this life. And we watched the first half of season 1. For those of you who don't know what the deal is, TrekChatz, we do it every once in a while, every month and a half or so now. We've watched through Star Trek The Next Generation. A while ago, we did that every 3 months, a season at a time. We were like, gosh, that's a lot of episodes to cram at once. People in our lives said, well, why don't you space them out? We said, that's hard. So we're going to make ourselves space them out by watching half a season at a time. And so here we are, the second half of DS9 Season 1. We watched and covered the first half. What was a month and a half ago? That was like the beginning of March, something like that. You can go find it. And so this is episodes 11 through 20 of that season. And what we do on these episodes is we talk about our feelings of this chunk of episodes, and then we get into each one, and we internet it up and we put them in a tier list, and we have a good time. So
indeed,
that's what we are doing tonight.
Getting right into it. DS9 Season 1 Part 2. That's the episodes 11. It's at 111 the Nagus all the way into 120, which is called In the Hands of the Prophets. What did you think about this chunk of episodes in general? How'd you feel? Are we improving? Are we decreasing? Are we the same?
I mean, I've learned over the course of doing chats for as long as we have to be pretty forgiving of first seasons of, especially of like speculative fiction shows that are trying to figure out within the realm of infinite imagination what is actually interesting for this show to do.
Yeah.
So, you have a lot of episodes in here that are kind of like, that's not the most interesting thing. But it's definitely doing it with a more sure-footedness than Star Trek The Next Generation, because it has the benefit of having people who worked on that show, having the hindsight of like what worked on TNG versus what didn't. So, there weren't any episodes in this half of the season that I thought were bad in the way that I thought, maybe episode 10 was pretty bad. The one where it's like Candyland, but with the people from the ship, and it was a weird, bad episode. But we're not hitting any startling lows. But it is kind of like sputtering to life and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I think we land on a couple things over the course of these 10 episodes where I say, okay, cool. If you give me, 3 to 4 episodes of this per season, I will enjoy that. I think I really loved all the stuff that they did with Kira when they spent time with Kira. She's easily my favorite character right now, especially in this chunk. I don't know where the fan base lands on Jake and Nog, and if they like think of them as Wesley, as they thought of Wesley or not. But I'm here to say that all of the Jake and Nog content was fantastic. And I want more of that. And there was also a lot of stuff that I thought was really underdeveloped. Where was Dax during a lot of this time?
Yes.
So those are my general thoughts. Pretty good, I think I would say. What about you?
Yeah. I also wanted to shout out like O'Brien getting some good stuff this batch of episodes. Yeah. He doesn't really get a single episode focused on him, but he's involved in a lot of plots, and in one of the plots that like starts in the middle of this chunk and ends in the finale, with his assistant in engineering. And his development with Keiko is improving. I think Keiko as a character is finally getting really interesting stuff to do. So they're broadening out the scope. But I think overall, what I'm appreciating is that DS9 seems to be a show focusing on the people and the jobs that we don't think about otherwise. When Wesley got episodes in TNG, it wasn't necessarily about what do teenagers do on the Enterprise. It was like, what does somebody who's on the path to becoming the next Picard, what does that look like for them? Or what does him learning to be a leader? It wasn't about him being a teenager, it was about him being a leader, or dealing with military repercussions, with the incidents with his friends. And I think that's the drumhead. No, it's not the drumhead, but regardless, Wesley was a young person, but his stories were not about necessarily just being a young person. Jake and Nog are explicitly like teenagers who at the moment are not on track to like be the next Starfleet captains. They're just kids. And I spent a lot of time this weekend with a couple of my cousins and their kids who are teenagers, and it's like they're doing it right. They just explore things and they want to see how does life work? How do we make money? Almost similar to like, going back to Simpsons stuff. Like, what does Bart do on a regular episode premise? Well, he can fall in love. He can have crushes on girls, but he's not going on like body romantic adventures or getting mind controlled. So I think they're actually handling them well in terms of like focusing on little things. Same thing with Keiko, where it's like, what does a school what's the importance of a school on DS9? Like, what does that actually mean, and why do we teach on a school like that, on a station like that? So I think they're like this part of the season is really focusing on what I like about DS9, which is the focus on underrepresented parts of this world. So I've really enjoyed that. I agree 100% though. Like, severe lack of Dax in these episodes. She is present. She is, there to give advice and stuff. But there are just no episodes about her or about the Trill at all, which is a little bit of a bummer. And also, like, Cisco is there and is a maker and a shaker, but like, I don't think we've seen really much about him, like specifically episodes about him, in a little while. And I would like one of those.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of his interiority in these 10. And I think we talked last time about how, the emissary, the pilot, is so dazzling as a pilot because it like really fully dives into his character and takes him through a complete arc in a way. And then you leave that episode sort of like, okay, well,
what's left
now
for him?
What does this guy do? Where does he go? There, I think there's 1 or 2 episodes where he's meaningfully challenged and we get to see him change his mind on things. But for someone who is the leader of the ship, I agree. I would want him to like change or be changed a little more often in some of these plots.
Yeah, and I want to double down on what you said, which is like, this is becoming the Kira Nerys show right now, and I love that. I think
I'm here for it. Yeah,
I'm here for it. She's getting the best stuff that the show can offer, and firing on more than all cylinders, on like cylinders I never thought possible. I do feel like when I watched when I finished the season, I had this thought. I was like trying to tweet through it. I'm like, this is probably the best first season of Trek. I mean, we've watched 2 of them, so like, I know people like the first season.
It's definitely better than season 1 of TNG for sure.
That's easy, but this is like one of the best first seasons of something I've seen in terms of overall general quality. I think for me, Lost season 1 still has it beat in terms of baseline level, but Lost season 1 doesn't have the high peaks that this does, so it's kind of hard to measure out averages like that. I don't think this is that's an exercise worth participating in, but it's really freaking good. And the fact that this is season 1 of like 7 is like amazing that they've done this, and they have so much more runway to work with. Because like, by the end of this, we'll talk a lot about it. By the end of this batch of episodes, I was like, oh, everybody knows how to play their characters now. Like, I think it was around 118 where I was like, oh, this is the moment. I can see them settling into what does being these characters mean? How do they interact with each other? Because we're still a little early to do like, the traditional body swap concept. We're still a little early to do stuff where like you're playing a parody of your character, but we're really close. We're really, really close to that now by the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think a show that has a similar kind of success in its first season is ironically Babylon 5, where there is some silliness and some shakiness, inconsistency in terms of quality, but you get these flashes and eventually you get these like kind of big picture plot movements that give you the confidence that the show knows what it wants to be about, knows the themes that it wants to explore, and has already begun to do that in a way where you're confident that you can go into season 2 knowing that it's going to be really good. So it was reminding me of that as I was watching it. And you get these character study episodes where you're like, oh my gosh, Londo Mollari is so cool and fascinating and has a part to play in all this. That's what this season felt like to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I freaking love DS9, man. I want to talk about it. Let's get into these episodes.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we begin our return to DS9 season 1 with season 1, episode 11, The Nagus, which is a Ferengi-centric episode that starts off pretty humble, like a lot of DS9 episodes do. I kept writing this in my notes, like, oh, this didn't end the way it started at all. We really like escalated sort of like the seriousness of this, where Quark is after some complicated stuff with the Nagus, who is a new Ferengi elder that comes onto the station, is given the opportunity to prove himself if he wants to be the next Nagus. It's like a high level of being in Ferengi society. People try to assassinate him. There is Ferengi politics. There is also Jake and Nog trying to make money in this one. And it's revealed that it's all a big test for him. How did you feel about the Nagus?
I was intrigued by something that I initially thought was repetitive in this season, but by the time you get to the last episode, you start to see that in a way they're foreshadowing where the last episode is going to go. But we have a lot of episodes in this season that are about, oh, here's this leader of this society and they get killed or they can't come back or whatever it is. There are 3 of those, and then the last episode of the season, which is all about this conflict in Bajoran society over religious leader succession, and it's a much more serious political intrigue thing. And the Nagus is kind of like a comedic reflection of the season finale in a way.
Yeah.
That I didn't appreciate at the time that I was watching it, but when you take the whole season as a single piece of art, it's pretty cool the way that they prime you to be thinking about, okay, well, what does it look like when somebody seizes power, or how should succession work? Who deserves to become the next leader of this thing? Is it somebody who has been waiting in the wings for a while? Is it somebody with new ideas? Is there like a proper protocol that should be followed? And obviously when you're watching this episode, you're not thinking about that because it's like goofy Ferengi nonsense. But I think they developed that theme over the course of the season really well. I don't love the Ferengi. I find the Ferengi kind of annoying on top of my pre-existing uncomfiness with just how they exist and what they are or are not allegories for in the real world, purposefully or accidentally. But I do love Wallace Shawn. I'm a big Wallace Shawn fan. And seeing him as the leader of the Ferengi was great. That was super fun. So this was just like a silly, fun one if you can get over like the Ferengi being like, oh, we want money and so I'm also horny or something. Yeah, that's my Wallace Shawn impression.
First thing I was gonna say, correction.
What do you think?
The Jake and Nog stuff in this one is not the money one. This is where Jake is teaching Nog how to read because he's going to get kicked out of school. And Nog is
that
also...
That plot line was great.
Yes.
By the way.
This is the one where the B plot is much better because it's subtle and like kind of just happens. And it's not trying to make some bigger point about like... So the Great Nagus is like the leader of the Ferengi Alliance, right? And that I want to talk about. But like Jake and Nog... is it's like if Nelson Muntz and Bart Simpson became friends or something. I really am just so Simpsons brain. Like, what if and there are episodes where that happens, but like Nog there's a sadness to like he doesn't get to learn as much because his family keeps like pulling him out of school to like become like a criminal and like get into learn how to work with money instead of learning practical skills. There is something sad about that and understated about that. And so it's this moment where Jake is like, I can't tell people why I'm meeting you. My dad thinks that I'm meeting you. And like, there are parts where Cisco goes up to like Dax and it's like, I think my son is getting involved with a bad crowd. I feel bad because I want to pull him out. Like, I acknowledge that this is bad. It has to be wrong, but I don't want to interfere in his life like that. Cause then I think he says to Dax, like, if he had the choice between Nog and me, I'm worried because he would choose Nog. Of course he would. And then for him to pull back the curtain and like do all this investigation, and it's like, oh, it's because he's teaching him to read and it's working out well, and I can't interfere with that. It's actually a good development for Cisco. We're talking about not a lot of Cisco episodes, but like realizing a lot of Cisco's like challenges in this season are about control and how much can you assume you know somebody before you have to investigate them, and what does investigating them entail. That's why I really love this. That final moment where he pulls the curtain back is like a little 90s schmaltz, but also quite nice.
Yeah, this was the episode I had in mind when I was saying, he has moments where there's some pretty significant development for him. And I think the best of what Nog and Jake represent, as you were saying, they have a role to play in like, what does it look like for kids to be growing up in this context? And I think if Deep Space Nine is about, how do we rebuild in the wake of a war, or how do we find stability for a society that has been unstable for so long? a big part of that is, well, what's the younger generation choosing to inherit or choosing to move on from? And it's really beautiful to watch Jake and Nog wrestle with, well, this is what I'm being told by my dad. My dad is somebody who I trust, whose opinion I respect, but I also know that this other kid is my friend and that it's wrong to like refuse their friendship. I know that it feels bad. So now I need to take that step in my maturation where I'm not just going to take everything that my dad says or my parents say at face value. I'm going to incorporate that into my own perception of the world and my own moral judgments and make my own decisions. And it was really beautiful. Like the moment where I realized Jake and Nog run off and then Cisco's going to find him. And before he turns the corner, I wasn't like actually crying, but you know, in my brain, it's like I'm bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
Going, oh my God, he's tutoring him. Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah. And I think there are some other threads to this and the Nog character that are really fascinating that I think are honestly undermined by how cartoonish Ferengi society is portrayed to be, because there is something really compelling about like the Ferengi who are on DS9 are a pretty significant minority. Like we see Quark and his brother, and I don't know that we see any other Ferengi who are residents of Deep Space Nine, as far as I'm aware, or if there are, they're not very prominent characters. And so Quark and his brother are trying to like hold on to their culture and pass their culture along to Nog. And Nog is going to this school that is, I mean, if this was the US, I would say it's Americanizing him. So it's federationizing him. And I can understand why a parent in that situation would be like, this is terrifying to me that your values are shifting. And what am I supposed to do? I don't know that I want you to be in that school. And again, that is also a plot line and a question that is in some ways kind of a comedic foil to the discussion of school and what's taught in school in the last episode of the season.
There you go.
Or in this, in the last episode. So really fascinating parallels that are being drawn, which are kind of undermined when you go to the Ferengi meeting and they're like, we want profit. Nobody will know that we fucking suck.
I think what complicates this, pivoting to the A plot briefly, like what complicates the Ferengi metaphor for me is that most of the high up Ferengi characters are played by Jewish actors. Wallace Shawn currently identifies as a Jewish atheist. Armin Shimmerman, born into a Jewish family from New York. Like, there's this thing where it's like you guys are playing what feels like a parody of your own culture, but you're embracing it and making it your own. And does that loop it all the way around to no longer being offensive? And I know a lot of Trek fans and Jewish Trek fans who'd say, I actually like the Ferengi and their portrayal because it's reclaimed by Jewish actors. That's why when I saw Wallace Shawn, not only was I like, I freaking love Wallace Shawn, he's half of one of my favorite movies of all time, but also they know what they're doing. And then going forward a little bit, in Duet, when you have Quark, a Ferengi man played by a Jewish actor, say, like, people should rise up against, fascism and whatnot, talking about the Cardassians and the Bajorans, and you're like, in the episode that is most clearly a Holocaust metaphor, you're like, somebody on this writing staff fully knows what they're doing, or is at least trying to do it in ways that fit inside of a network sci-fi television show. And so that's why, like, I just don't feel equipped to say, like, I think the Ferengi are racist. I will never just say that. But, like, it feels weird. And it's also being done and handled in a sort of subtle way that nods to the people's actual culture.
Yeah, I think what I can continue to confidently say is that it makes me feel uncomfy. And it just will. But like you're saying, there is that kind of, like, reclaiming or the more charitable reading that we can make. And along these lines, the experience that Nog has is for sure an experience that, like, a child of Jewish immigrants who is going to school and their parents are like, well, you're like kind of, rejecting the culture that you're coming from, but it's something that we feel we need to protect. And now we don't know how we feel about you being here. And also it's like a truth of American history that those tensions around the children of immigrants with different religious beliefs coming into schools and what gets taught or favored in schools, even if it's like a Protestant Catholic thing or a Christian Jewish thing or whatever, those are very real tensions and stories that the Ferengi are positioned in this show to be able to tell and to represent. Right. Which is cool. And I was really happy to see that here. And I continue to be like, they look like the goblins from Harry Potter, which are also shitty.
Which is way more explicitly anti-Semitic.
Yeah, right.
The line in Duet is actually Quark being like, I feel bad for you guys for surviving a labor camp, ... But also, do you guys like to gamble? Which is another, like, can you do one of those things without the other one? Is that but that's the joke, it's all there.
Right.
It's complicated. That's why I like DS9 so much. It's like they don't want to give you clear metaphors. They like to keep things muddy. We gotta rank this one though. We gotta rank the Nagus.
We didn't say, but the Nagus like dies and Quark becomes the Nagus, and then there's this whole thing where he's worried about, is he gonna get killed? But then it was all a trick.
And then he's like, wait, my brother was gonna totally kill me. That's horrible. My brother.
But then he's like, oh, bro, you were gonna kill me? I didn't think you had the lobes. There's a lot of talk of lobes being balls, which I don't love, talking about the lobes. This is a B for me, I think. It's got some great stuff, but as an episode, it's kind of clunky and odd.
But I really do love Wallace Shawn. That's my...
Yeah, no, he's fantastic.
Agreed on B, but also B for bring back Wallace Shawn, even though his character died.
Also,
he didn't die. No, he did die.
No, he's alive.
Okay.
I was ready to like gush about this one a little bit more. And then at the very end of the episode, I had this super bad taste in my mouth.
Nog and Jake will get the woman's butt.
Yeah, because this moment where it's like, we've bonded, we're hanging out again, and my dad approves of us hanging out. And there's just, apropos of nothing, this shot of Nog and Jake ogling, I think, a Vulcan woman's butt. And nobody says a thing about it. That's it. What are you trying to communicate with that shot? It's this weird fucking thing where, and was like part of my frustration with this half of the season, not having a lot of Dax in it, and at first barely having Kira in it. And I was like, I know I love Jake and Nog, but it feels like this show is so much more interested in telling stories about like pubescent boys and their experiences, and this kind of nostalgic, like, to be a young boy, like running around, playing pranks and staring at women's butts. Yeah. Gosh, it was so much more interested in that than telling stories about like women from their perspectives. Mm-hmm. So that whole shot, I was like, what the fuck are we doing, Deep Space Nine? Mm-hmm. For real? What is that?
The first half of the season does just suffer from it's a very guy heavy part. And I think I wrote like 3 or 4 episodes in my notes. I was like, where is Kira? Where is Dax? What's going on?
Yeah, they're barely in it. There's a show episode that's set at the school, and they're like, Keiko's not here. O'Brien's going to be teaching today. Why? What? Yeah. She didn't actually leave. You wrote that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, maybe she was busy. I don't know. But
right.
Anyway, the vibes are super weird.
That's this episode, right? Because this is when O'Brien says, write an essay defining the term ethics.
Oh, that is this one. That was. I wrote a note about like, man, educational pedagogy has really slipped in the centuries between now and then. To think that like that's your teacher move.
Yeah.
It's all right. Go write an essay about ethics. And then the way that you review it with your students is you cold call somebody to read their essay to the class. I mean, O'Brien's not a teacher. He's an engineer, so I'll give him a pass. But Keiko should have left him a curriculum or something. Have the kids do a project instead of just kind of like making it up as he goes along.
It does show that he's not a good teacher. Like it shows that Keiko's the one who's competent at this job, but it's also like,
yes,
what?
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
You want to move on to Vortex?
Yeah, let's do that. So the Nagus is going into B tier.
For sure.
Okay,
So
Vortex.
I wrote here high A, low S. What did I like about Vortex? Odo's being paranoid, and we can tell this is oh my god, because this is the Changeling episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, this isn't the best Changeling episode, but it's good, and it's actually considered, like, if you really care about canon and stuff, pretty important that this episode does hard confirm that there are other Changelings out there, because they have a prisoner on the ship who is like, oh, Odo, you're not the only Changeling. I've like seen other ones. I've met them. I've like run into them. And Odo is like, do I free this prisoner to find out that other people of my race exist? Is that worth it? And he's dealing with that moral quandary. I love Odo so much. If I have a problem with Vortex, it's that it like takes a while to get to the like moral meat and potatoes that I wanted so badly. But then there's that moment in the middle of the episode where the criminal says to him, you know, you can pour your square shape into a round hole, but you don't really fit, do you? Which is like silly and also such a cruel thing to say to someone like Odo, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And like he gets the short shrift so much in this show. I feel really bad for the guy. We learn explicitly in this episode, and then we see it later, that as a Changeling, he has to revert every 8 hours out of every 24 to his default state, which is a gelatinous liquidish state. And like that vulnerability of that, and that he has to be in a space. And I don't think it's in this episode when the kids mess with him, but we see that he puts himself into a bucket when he does that, or like an urn kind of, and the kids like put oatmeal in it, and it's like, that's his home, you guys. Like, that's so teenagers do things like that. Teenagers do things like that where it's like you don't realize how mean this is because you're too young to get it, but like,
right, it's their way of processing, like, this is unusual and I'm trying to make sense of it and figure out where the boundaries are. But it's very mean.
Yeah. And emotionally this one does work for me though, because Odo gets that locket at the end, confirming that there's like with the changing key that can fit any shape, and he says home, where is it? And you're like, oh. So like emotionally I ranked this one really highly, but it's not extremely memorable in itself other than confirming that there are other Changelings.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about Vortex?
I think it was a really great character study of Odo because his counterpart in this is like this compulsively dishonest, very manipulative,
Croden,
suspicious dude, Croden. It both confirms and questions Odo's like paranoia and his inability to trust people.
Yeah.
And it shows, okay, well, this guy actually was very untrustworthy. He lied to Odo constantly throughout the whole episode. And so Odo choosing to doubt him was a good idea. And also, because Odo allowed himself to be vulnerable and allowed himself to believe, and ultimately made the choice to like be merciful with this guy and help him save his daughter or help him escape, Odo was changed in the process of that and grew as a person, learned something about his people, learned something about himself that he wouldn't have known otherwise. So I think DS9, I think you said this, the show's interest in like conflicting ideas or that sort of nuance gray area, I think it puts Odo in that position where you can understand exactly why he is the way he is, and you also see him allowing himself to be hopeful, which is a really beautiful thing.
And the real tragedy, I think, of this episode too is he does eventually go with Croden and find out this whole story about like, oh, he's a political prisoner. And then he's like, I actually never met any changelings. I brought you here so that I could go find my daughter. They like separated me from her. And the necklace I bought you was from like a market. I've never actually met a changeling. But Bashir confirms it is a changeling technology. So what this episode gives is not confirmation, but hope. It like reignites Odo's hope that like this exists. So I think it's actually like really important to watch, you know, because I know that we're going to get a lot of changeling stuff in this show over time, and to like see that from now is really good. And also this is the first time of a couple that Odo smiles, which is rare. And it's apparently because it was really hard under the prosthetics for Renee to like make a smile happen.
I believe it.
So when he smiles in this one, I was like, oh, my boy, I'm so happy for him. Even though he didn't actually get any confirmation, but he got hope, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
So
the makeup department is really on one on this show. They're like seriously Star Wars pilled. It's hilarious. It feels like every episode we're in the Mos Eisley Cantina and there's like a blue dude and sort of forehead over here, and it's pretty fun. There's a lot more random aliens than we saw in TNG.
Exactly. And like you said in your notes too, like at the end of the day, this episode convinces him both to be hopeful, but also to still not trust everyone. Like Odo just can't break down all of his walls yet, and there's poetry to that. So I liked it. Definitely. It's an A for me. I'm willing to go.
I think A is good.
Okay. It just doesn't do anything wrong. It's just like it's a little slow, and it's very like it's about Odo and this guy. I mean, like no one else would like. That's not a bad thing. It's solid. That brings us to episode 13, Battle Lines. I wrote, I'm gonna lock in for this one. Kaiopaka is here. We're checking out a cool wormhole. Kaiopaka comes back on the ship since the pilot. We haven't seen her. Bajoran's spiritual leader. We bring Bashir, we bring Sisko, and we bring Kira with her onto this planet. We go through the through the wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant. Yeah, it's our first time going over there, and we land on a planet that is engaged in a forever war. So we have Jonathan Banks' alien on one side.
He was great, by the way. He was great in this role as like a really cranky guy who can't die.
He really just. This is like the character Jonathan Banks plays. He's been doing it since the 90s. It's so like, what if Mike from Breaking Bad was in a forever war?
Was an alien. Yeah, exactly.
And Kaiopaka realizes that this might be her holy duty, is to be with these people after she's harmed and then comes back to life. She's like, this is where I'm meant to be. We get some classic moral play stuff about like, who do we give the power to end this war? Do we let everyone be free? Oh, they don't really want to be free. They part of them wants to keep fighting. There is this desire to live to die a hero's death and to not simply die of old age. And we kind of leave and wipe our hands of that. There's a lot of clear historical metaphor stuff going on here. And I think what really makes this episode work for me is Kira. This is the first episode where I was like, holy crap. Kira is somebody who has dealt with a seemingly endless conflict between two parties who both believe that they are right. And her conversations with the Kai in this one really got to me because almost wordlessly they realize that she's basically asking the Kai to like forgive her for the violence that is in her past. And I think that part's really beautiful, like almost begging her. And then the Kai says, "Don't deny the violence inside of you, Kira." And I'm like, whoa, this is a lot. There's a lot going on. But I didn't particularly love the way this episode wrapped up. But I think moral complexity, real world parallels, and the incredible acting across the board overall really did sell me on this one. It worked for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best part of this episode by far is what you're saying, the Kira stuff. And Kaiopaka essentially saying, hey, you gotta accept and acknowledge your past in order to begin the healing process. Yeah. And it's really cool that DS9 is making that idea part of the DNA of the show, because that's essentially what Sisko learned in the pilot, right?
Yeah.
Is if you want to be able to live and move on and make something of the time that you have left, you can't deny the past. You can't deny who you were or how that led to where you are. You need to accept it and allow yourself to feel it so that you can heal from it.
Right.
And to see Kira confront that is really moving. Like I was like, okay, maybe I'll write down a line or two from this exchange. And then I wrote down like 5 lines in a row, which included what you read. Kaiopaka says, "Don't deny the violent side of you, Kira. Only when you accept it can you move beyond it." Kira says, "I've known nothing but violence since I was a child." Opaka says, "In the eyes of the prophets, we're all children. Bajor has much to learn from peace. I'm afraid the prophets won't forgive me. They just want you to forgive yourself." Damn. And then I think the prisoner planet people who were imprisoned here with these like nanobots that keep them alive so that they suffer more is an interesting sci-fi short story idea. And I'm intrigued by seeing these groups, you know, when Jonathan Bakes' character is like, hey, we used to defend ourselves more strategically, but when you cease to fear death, the rules of war change. And so now there's just like, we're just kind of swinging at each other, even though we can't die. It's really fascinating from a sci-fi perspective. Like you're saying, the resolution isn't very satisfying, and it feels a little arbitrary that Kaiopaka is just like, hey, remember me from the pilot? I think I want to stay here now.
Well, she has to.
Well, she has to because she died, and she'll die for real if she leaves. Mm-hmm. But just her whole, like, there was a prophecy that made me think I was going to die here, so let's go find out if I do, was a little, I don't know, a little arbitrary, a little convenient. It was fine. But, yeah, it was not the most interesting A-plot, I don't think.
It's also just juggling a lot. Like, I think the Eternal War thing is cool. And like you said, great short story concept. The book, The Forever War, is a great story if you want to see more about this and how people's like ideas of conflict change when things don't end. But it's a different idea. It's because the metaphor is less about like, what if you couldn't die? But it's more, what if no matter how much we fought, this conflict never cooled off? Which is... Right. That's where the real world parallels come in, you know,
right.
Conflict that doesn't seem to have an end because people have generations of families that are raised to think the other people are bad and nobody can learn from that.
Yeah. And they have such a clear-eyed awareness of like, well, we're fighting because we were imprisoned here and given the means to fight each other. Why are you still fighting? Well, because they fought us and fuck it. We don't care. We're going to keep fighting. So this episode also raises the question of like, how do you stop a conflict when it feels like you've gone beyond any of the possible reasons that the conflict would stop, which is obviously meant to reflect, you know, the Cardassian Bajoran situation. And it does feel a little like, at the end of the episode when we fly off and we're leaving this place essentially how we found it. But it also feels like that's part of the point is like, this isn't TNG. It's not a show where you can just kind of like fly in, break the Prime Directive, fix a society, and then leave. You're going to try to do that, and then you're not going to be able to change the course of history in an afternoon because that's not how human or, you know, humanoid societies work. So,
yes.
I was kind of like, but also I think that was compelling.
Yeah, super compelling script, which is why I give it like either a low A or a high B. Brought down, unfortunately, by the sort of like wishy-washiness of the ending. Although I agree, like them just having to leave is a very DS9 solution.
I think taken in the context of the whole season, there are at least 2, if not 3 other Kira episodes that are better. So to me, it's a B because I have to curve it on the curve of like the rest of the episodes that come after it. But in the moment I was like, whoa, A tier. Kira has trauma. This is awesome. But it's a B for me if you're down for that.
I'm definitely down for that.
Also, I know I'm just going to have to get over this, but you're telling me that the Gamma Quadrant is just like a place where there's more humans in makeup who speak English?
Yeah.
And
right.
Like, what? What are we doing? Why did we make up there's a whole nother wacky area of space that we've never been to before so that we can just do the same Star Trek stuff that we always do? Like, make it weirder, or I don't know. That bugged me as a sci-fi person. I'm just sick of meeting new aliens that are like, oh, hello there. Ah, yes, I have a weird forehead, but I'm pretty much just a guy.
That's just Star Trek, you know?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
The frustrating thing.
Gotta accept it.
It's tough. I hope they can branch out. Well, I mean, like, hey, TNG had an episode where an entire society existed inside of a microorganism. Like, they can do it. It's not like they're incapable. It's just that this is the easiest way to depict it with, like, acting and people in costume, which is, like, what Trek is good at.
True.
Moving on. 114. This is the storyteller. This is a pretty bog standard premise, in my opinion. O'Brien finds himself, oopsie, accidentally becoming the storyteller, which is this like high religious position of these aliens. Him and Bashir are dealing with the difficulty of that because they want to get him out, but us being a storyteller means you have to save people from this like sunbeam that will kill them if the storyteller doesn't, or like this dark tornado that if you don't tell them that the light will come, then it'll actually kill them. So that's our A plot. And meanwhile, the B plot is Jake and Nog like a pretty girl. And she's one of the like ambassadors from that society. So she's a little bit old for them. They still really want to woo her. She sees right through it. They have a little bit of fun. They do the oatmeal prank. And then another storyteller takes the job from O'Brien and saves the day. And he's able to leave.
Yeah, this is like the third episode in already the first four where a plot is about a leader of a society dying or passing on control or whatever, and it's the least interesting of those. It's less interesting than the Nagus. It's less interesting than Battle Lines. It feels it's so odd because this is essentially just, like you said, a Star Trek off the ship planet episode, but we can't do those because we're not on a ship that's going anywhere, so it has to be Bajorans. But this has nothing to do with like what we already know about Bajoran spirituality or Bajoran society. It doesn't have to. Like in theory, there's nothing wrong with we are liaising with, you know, different Bajoran nations and different people have different beliefs or whatever. The Bajorans can be multifaceted and we have the space to explore that. But it just feels like this episode doesn't really have any interest in the people on the planet being Bajoran. They just are because that's who it's able for them to be.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the stuff on the station with the young woman who's the diplomat, that plot I liked more, and I liked her interactions with Cisco, and I thought her scenes with Nog and Jake were fun. So that part of the episode was more enjoyable, but this stuff felt very arbitrary and kind of silly to me.
I think especially what's rubbed me the wrong way about it is we've talked about how DS9 is about people who aren't super important, incredible. You know, we'll see how that plays out with Cisco, you know, as this prophet character later. But O'Brien doesn't seem like the type of person that would stumble into, oops, I'm accidentally a deity. Like, I really like that my brain is now making connections between Star Trek and Xena, because we're doing Xena chats on the main feed as well. And I was like, oh, O'Brien pulled a Hooves and Harlots. Like, he said the words. He was in the right place at the right time, and now he's the guy. Whereas Gabrielle became the woman. So, like, they're doing a plot that we've seen in so many other shows before, and it's not even that particularly good. It's not the fault of O'Brien or Bashir. It's just like, we've seen this, and the CG is not very good either. It doesn't work for me. The A plot doesn't work for me much at all in this one.
Yeah, and I think it's good to bring in Xena and to bring this into contrast with the Nagus, because to me also what's not super interesting about it is O'Brien has no interest in being this storyteller, no connection to that role. O'Brien is not a character that we think of as a storyteller in that way. There's plenty that he has going for him and plenty of O'Brien moments in the season that are really great, but like this does not resonate with how he's been characterized. Whereas in Xena, you know, when Gabrielle wanders into a ceremony to resurrect the Titans, or when she saves an Amazon and gets promoted to Amazon Princess, those are moments where Gabrielle is like looking for her heroic moments. She's looking for status or notoriety or recognition. When in the Nagus, Quark gets promoted to be the next Nagus, and he's starting to wheel and deal and try to protect his power and get caught up in the politicking of it. It makes sense for Quark's character. You can understand why he would want to be that. So
yeah.
But for O'Brien, it's like you could have put literally any of the cast into this plot and it wouldn't have made a difference.
Yep. That's a good point.
And so that's why it didn't super resonate with me. I did like Bashir being his sidekick and like teasing him and seeing the two of them together. That wasn't something that I was expecting, but it was kind of fun.
I love Bashir as a sidekick or joke character. I think that's like the role that works for him right now.
Yeah, I agree.
What do we rank this one?
I ranked it a B, like a middle to low B. I do think that the station plot works. I like characters that are sort of like the young person who's been thrust into the leadership role earlier than they should have, and they get to enjoy being a kid. But also in the process of her hanging out with Nog and Jake, she's not just thinking about kid stuff. She's like through the conversations with Jake trying to get a sense of Cisco's character and whether she can trust him. And you know, all of that stuff I find interesting. So it's enough for me to like even this out to a just sort of an average B episode.
Fair enough. Okay.
Cool.
So Storyteller gets a B. That brings us next to 115 Progress, which was a very surprising episode for me. Surprisingly good, that is.
Yeah.
Our B plot. Jake and Nog want to make a ton of money selling Yamek sauce. Gold Press Latin gets mentioned multiple times.
They're basically just doing like a Tom Sawyer story or something.
Yeah.
Or it's like one of those YouTube videos where it's like we started with a paperclip and we ended with a mansion by trading it, you know, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty funny.
And then you're like, okay, that's pretty harmless. And then the A plot is Kira is leading the evacuation of a Bajoran planet where an old man refuses to leave. And we deal with, again, Kira has to face the weight of the crimes she's committed and the war that she's been a part of. And ultimately, does she put human life over politics? And she chooses to when she burns this man's house down in front of him so that he has to leave and go live his life. There is a tragedy to it. There is a weight, and the Nog Visitor is one of the best actors I've seen in Star Trek, and maybe in a while on TV at least. It's fucking wild. That scene where she burns it and she's like looking at him as she's pulling out the torch, incredible. You finally made the kiln. Congratulations. She blows his kiln up. It feels borderline like manipulative emotionally, but it does work. It really, at least for me. Oh, that's funny, actually. In my notes, I wrote, you said it's like the YouTube videos with the paperclip. I wrote the B plot is like the trading quest in Link's Awakening, where you start with a seashell and you end with the best. You are able to kill the boss, the final boss.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Kira stuff really shot this one straight up into the stratosphere for me. It's so good.
Definitely. And what I love about it is every single Kira plot in this season, on the surface of it, it's like, okay, we're exploring the same thing. We're exploring she was, a rebel in this conflict. She feels conflicted about some of the things she had to do. She's haunted by her role in it. And now she's also conflicted about this new set of responsibilities that she has as one of the builders and the maintainers, as opposed to one of the agitators.
Exactly.
But every Kira plot takes a slightly different angle on that set of questions, because with in Battle Lines, the Kaiopaka plot is pretty much purely just about like, what has it done to Kira to have lived so long in violence and to now need to be a peaceful person. And this episode is like kind of about that, kind of has threads of that. But it's also just about this idea of like, what can you re-enter into society at large? What do you owe to the collective? What do you have to sacrifice of yourself and what you've tended of yourself in order to help other people? Do you have a responsibility? And this guy who she's trying to convince to leave his home is kind of the opinion of like, I fought and I survived and I don't really owe anything to anybody else. This is my home. This is where I want to die.
Yeah.
I'm not compelled by this idea that like there's some sort of greater good that I need to make sure gets the electricity to run the power plants or whatever. And that kind of like individualistic but also very noble survivalist thing is something that Kira has to let go of and ceremonially burn from herself in the process of this. Just so beautiful. And to see her like be frustrated with this guy, but also like have an intimate relationship with him in the sense of like nobody is going to understand her and better than he is, and nobody's going to understand him better than she does. And there's like kind of a kinship that they find that's so special. So yeah, I thought this whole plot was really fantastic for the ways that it took those themes that we've seen from Kira, but totally recontextualized them and dramatized them in a new way.
I think what's weirdly working for me about the Kira storyline overall is so much of her conflict is not only how can I atone for the past, but like who are the people that I want to live and be a part of my community in the future? How do I rebuild this community? Because she doesn't have an elder like this man anymore. You know, a lot of those people are either dead or have left or, you know, evacuated or become refugees. And so she's like, I want you. It's like almost not selfish, but it's like, I want you in my life. I want you in Bajoran society and potentially on DS9 if that's something you want to do. So I need you to live for the rest of our society, and seeing the bigger picture there is like really, I wonder how the series will like zoom that out and like give Kira more or less agency over the Bajoran people.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like a big part of these ongoing themes of, you know, the show's about survival, it's about rebuilding, it's about leadership. I think that's a major theme of this season.
Yes.
What does it mean to be a good leader? And Kira is looking for a leader. Like you're saying, she's looking to Kaiopaka, she's looking at this guy. And at the end of the day, what she's realizing is that she is in the process of becoming the leader that she's looking for. And all of these plots are different steps that she needs to take in order to find that within herself, which is like a really lonely experience to realize that there isn't somebody who's going to be able to illuminate the path for you and tell you what you're supposed to do. Because like you said, those people are dead or they don't exist yet, because we haven't begun to imagine what that new Bajoran society could look like.
Exactly.
And I loved her interaction with Cisco in this one when he comes to talk to her, and he knows exactly what's going on. He says to her, like, you're on the other side of it now. It feels pretty bad, doesn't it? Like, but that's just what you got to do. Like, you're doing a service to your people that guys like this aren't really going to understand, because somebody has to be the person to build the foundation of the thing. Somebody has to do the work that we're doing. And nobody's going to thank you for it or build statues to you or sing, you know, glory songs about you. But like, it's the hard work that has to get done, which is really, really a beautiful thing to convey.
You got to watch Andor, bud. I hate to be that person talking about Star Trek and telling you to watch a Star Wars show. But there is a incredible monologue towards the end of Andor where a character talks about this, about like the tragedy of being a rebel and somebody who fights for, you know, your people like this. And it's like, it always makes me tear up thinking about it. Oh God. But like, you have to fight for people you don't know yet and who you're not going to see. The revolution will outlive you, and you're not going to see its results. Oh God. Yeah. That's
whoa.
So that's
cool.
Like a thing that Kira's dealing with here, you know?
Yeah, definitely. This is what I wish the sequel movies knew they were about. Like,
right.
Not to talk too much about Star Wars, like you said, while we're talking about Star Trek, but like The Last Jedi kind of knows that this is what it's about. And then Rise of Skywalker's like, no,
wait,
we're the rebels. We're the cool rebel good guys who are winning the war. It's like, no, man. You're the boring bureaucrats who are trying to rebuild and make sure that society functions. That's what you are. And that's actually really cool and sad and interesting and kind of lame. And that's the show I want. But yeah. My other favorite moment from this episode, just a random stray note also, is when Cisco's trying to like delay the process of them essentially whatever they're doing, they're like strip mining the moon or something like that, which is also an interesting element of this, that there's this kind of environmentalist, we have to rush this and make it the messy process because we need this energy now kind of thing. But he's trying to delay it, and he wants to be able to say that Dr. Bashir made Kira stay on the planet to take care of the guy. And then Bashir's like, but that's not true. And Sisko says, make it true, Doctor. And then Bashir is like, oh, yeah, totally. I recommend that she stay there for how long? And Sisko's like, for a few days. Bashir goes, for a few days, Commander. That's my official recommendation. I love that. I love when Sisko does those little things. Do what I need you to do by the rules thing. So that we can do what we want to do.
So cool. Such a cool guy.
Great. Yeah.
What do we rank this one?
Definitely at least an A, I think. I don't know what the criteria is to become an S. Did you lean that far, or were you in the A camp for this one?
I think it's A because the pacing is still a little bit off. That's the truth of the matter. Like, this is actually, for me, the importance of trying to pay attention when I watch the show, because it's so easy to, like, throw it on, But, like, to really differentiate yourself from an A to an S is to make me go, like, oh, shit, I need to pay attention to this. This is, like, an important episode of the show. It's important for people to watch it in the, spectrum of, like, what Trek episodes should you watch? And for me as a critic, like, it is reaching me on an emotional level. And even though this episode does reach me on an emotional level, I just think that it kind of crawls there. And that's why it's like a really high A for me, so close to an S. And I feel bad saying that because I did choke up, but like there are other episodes in this season that earned the S, more than one episode that earns the S,
Yeah. Okay. A tier sounds fair to me for progress.
Progresso. No, not this one. No. It's episode 16, If Wishes Were Horses. Do you know this saying, by the way? If wishes were horses? What the full saying is?
If wishes were horses, I forget.
Beggars would ride.
I see. Okay, sure.
The summary of this one on Paramount is completely nuts. Let me actually find it while we talk about it, because it's like weirder than the episode is for some reason. Here we go. If wishes were horses, it's harder to decide what's more incredible. Little Molly O'Brien's storybook Rumpelstiltskin coming to life? Or Jadzia Dax as a sex kitten? That completely misses the point of the episode. That's
no way you did a bad job. That was a bad job conveying what this episode is about.
Not even close.
Yucky, what a phrase.
A sex kitten.
What a yucky little phrase.
The holodeck, doesn't the holodeck act up in that? Oh, an anomaly in a plasma field makes Rumpelstiltskin appear out of Molly's storybook and makes another version of Dax that's really horny for Bashir because it's what he wants. But does he actually want that? He feels weird about it. And I remember next to nothing about this one, dog. I'm sorry.
It's kind of interesting. I actually like this one for how fucking bananas it is.
Oh, also Baseball Man comes to life. Buck Bokai.
Yeah, Baseball Man is awesome. Baseball Man is so great. Okay. So, because also they do the fucking like future show thing where he's a famous baseball player from our future, from 200 years before the show. I wish they would have gotten like a real life baseball guy from the fucking the Angels or something to be on the show. But instead they're like, oh, he's from the London Kings from 200 years ago and he broke Babe Ruth's record or whatever. They do a bait and switch for all the Star Trek fans out there where they make you think this is like a holodeck runs amok. There's a lot of talk at the beginning of the episode about the holo suites. It really bums me out, by the way, that we see almost no holodeck content in this show, and instead it's mostly just Quark talking about like all the like nasty dirty programs that he has in his holo suites. And then there's this, he's talking to Odo at the beginning about like, oh, I also want to include some family programming in next door. So they make you think that it's a holodeck thing, but it's actually aliens who are making our imaginations come to life because they're curious about how imagination works, which is kind of cool, kind of an interesting concept. I don't know what purpose it serves to trick me as a Star Trek fan into thinking I know what's going on, but I actually don't. But whatever, that's fine. Michael Anderson as Rumpelstiltskin is ridiculous,
Chatz
but
alum.
very fun. Chatz alum. I wrote in my notes, Michael Anderson talking forwards can't hurt you. But he was fun and just doing the sort of like, they know my name, what the heck. And I like Baseball Man. I like Baseball Man talking to Cisco, and Cisco critiquing his like performance as a baseball player was very funny to me. I actually enjoyed baseball being a thing in this episode. And the Dax stuff was, I think it was really interesting to unpack, because we start the episode with fucking Bashir being the worst and hitting on Dax again. Oh, you're all I can think about. I can't stop thinking about you. This is sexual harassment at this point. You need to stop. And Dax is like, oh, Bashir, quit it. And then he has this imagined version of Dax who is like so submissive and has the hots for him.
Ugh.
And then he goes to work that morning thinking that it's the real Dax. Can you imagine if somebody at your job rolls in and they're with a version of somebody else at your job who is like their sexual fantasy version of them? And every single coworker is there.
Yeah.
And then learns, oh, that's not the real Dax. It's like,
I would
mortifying.
simply quit. I would quit if I was Bashir.
It's mortifying. And then he and Dax have an interesting conversation about it, where he apologizes to her. And I don't know how I feel about this and like who's right or wrong or whatever, but Dax takes the position of, hey, you are not expecting for your imagination to become a corporeal being. And in a way, I kind of feel like I invaded your privacy, which I don't think that's how like a real person would feel about that situation. I think that's kind of unrealistic. And again, I don't know where I land on that, but I think it's an interesting scene and question to explore. And then it gets really stupid when like fake Dax starts telling real Dax that she's high maintenance or something, and she's like, oh, what? I'm not. And now the episode's dumb again. So
yeah,
there are things to write think pieces about in If Wishes Were Horses, but it's not good.
It's not
per
good.
se. Yeah.
I'm saying low C, high D on this one. I'm going downtown.
Part of me is like, so bad it's good.
Oh, yeah. I always forget we have that category. It's not repulsive to watch. It's just like,
no.
Really? Rumpelstiltskin?
Yeah, I think it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, I think that like...
Or bad,
DS9,
but actually good.
Yeah, bad, but actually good. I think that DS9 just can't... It doesn't do this like fantasy stuff really well. Like,
no.
I wonder what a good DS9 holodeck episode would be like, because TNG kind of had the market cornered on the series' best holodeck episodes. Like, what's left for DS9 to cover there? Because the whole point, like I said earlier, is that they're covering untouched ground. And I know this is not a holodeck thing, this is an alien thing, but like, again, fantasy stuff. Like, Strange New Worlds has an episode that does like a cool, we go on a fantasy adventure thing, and I love that episode. Because it's tackling new ground. This is not, and it is not fun for me to watch.
Yeah, agreed.
So bad it's good. God, another one. From here on out, I'm like, every episode is surprisingly good. Like, surprisingly, I keep saying it. Why am I surprised? Yeah. I don't know, because I never watched the show before, guys. Everything is by default going to be fine, and then I'm like, oh my god, this is actually great. We're talking about The Forsaken next. This is episode 17. Majel Barrett's character of Luoxana Troy comes onto DS9 because it's as you were on your notes, it's late season and they just love to do this towards the end to like inject some energy into the end of a season of Trek.
Yeah, this is the contractual Luoxana Troy episode, which I hope they keep doing and carry over from TNG doing that every season to them doing it here every season, because they're always like a shot in the arm late in the season to keep the mood up.
are they aware of the comedy of the A plot being about Loaxana and the B plot being about O'Brien realizing the computer has a personality change because the computer is voiced by Majel Barrett as well?
It felt intentional to me.
It has to be. It has to be.
Yeah.
So in this A plot, she is on the ship or on the station for reasons, and she meets Odo, and she goes, "Oh my God, this is a conquest for me. This guy is everything that I want." And he says, I don't know how to be sexual. I don't think I like you like that. And she says, "But what if you did? Let me introduce you to the concept of MILFs." And he's like, "Well, no, I turn into a liquid for 8 hours a day. Please don't." And she's like, "Well, I have my own. I put on airs for people too." And then this episode takes all that silliness and synthesizes it into one of the series' most beautiful, touching moments of unintentional, queer-coded romance
connection. Yeah.
I specifically say queer-coded, not because I think Loaxana is queer. I guess maybe she is. Probably she is.
Yeah.
But to take off your wig is a very queer-inspired, drag-inspired moment. And Loaxana has already been a bit of a drag type character. That is her vulnerability, as Odo is collapsing into liquid in front of her because it's been too long and they're trapped and he can't go back into his bucket. I was so touched by that scene. Enough that I forgot about all of the silliness about the computer has a personality in the B plot. I totally ignored that. And I let myself be in the moment of Odo and Loaxana being vulnerable with each other, and I truly, truly loved that finale.
Yeah, the whole stuff with them on the elevator together is S tier, amazing plot. To see, they have this sort of classic anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, attraction dynamic where he's like, "Please don't talk," and she's like, "Totally, I cannot talk. Anyway, I'm gonna talk for the next couple minutes straight." Sorry, I was supposed to not be talking. That's my bad. And he's got all of this trauma from being studied in the thing, but also had a connection to the scientist who was studying him, and she learns that he modeled his hair after that person. And this slow peeling back of Odo and who he is and what he's gone through, to the point where you're saying he's willing to be fully vulnerable with her in a way that he's never been with anybody else. It's really, really touching, and a level of Odo character development that I honestly wasn't expecting to get, or if I was expecting to get it, I wasn't expecting to get it so soon in the show. So was it kind of random that Loaxana was here? Yeah, absolutely. Why is she here? Not explained. Just because she's part of this delegation or something. Yeah. Was she the perfect character to be here? And now I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Odo Loaxana or Loaxodo shipper, as we call ourselves. Yes, that's me, 100%. I hope those crazy kids can figure something out and get together.
And to be fair to Odo, if I was in front of Majel Barrett and trapped in an elevator with her, I too would sweat so much that my corporeal form collapsed.
Turn totally red, end up in a pool in her arms. Yeah, 100%.
I want to cry, dude. The part where she's like, "I'll hold you in my dress." It's so good.
Yeah, it's good. It's extremely good.
I love this freaking weird show. And again, meanwhile, O'Brien, what's going on? Why is the computer not listening to me? It's being sassy. Listen, do you notice the computer's being less assertive? It's not listening to me. It's because it's Majel Barrett.
The computer stuff, I thought, again, ended up in kind of a fun sci-fi short story place where it's a digital life form or something is in the computer and likes hanging out with us and doing computer stuff because it was lonely. So we shouldn't kick it out of the computer. We should just give it not super important computer calculations to do.
Yeah.
So it was intellectually satisfying for me to see O'Brien be like, "Okay, I'm going to set up this little subroutine and you can hang out here and be my pet." And Sisko's like, "Don't let it get on the furniture," or whatever. And that scratched my brain as somebody who enjoys sci-fi concepts. but it is kind of just a thing that's happening because something needs to be happening.
Right. And it's funny too that this is considered a bottle episode because most of it's on that elevator, and it's like, guys, when you work in your limitations, you tend to write better scripts, in my opinion. This and Duet are considered bottle episodes, and I'm like, huh? Wait, that's awesome. Work in smaller sets more often. Yeah. I also just wanted to say, speaking of like metaphors and metaphor storytelling in this show, how good it is. Odo is a picture of masculinity, right? He's somebody who tries to be stern and never smile. This is the second time in the show that he smiles, is in this one. And to allow himself to collapse and to be soft and anxious in front of somebody is like near impossible for him. So for her to accomplish that is amazing. It's all there. It's all, this is like what falling in love with someone is like. Let yourself become liquid in front of them.
Yeah, and I just on the masculinity thing, I mean, Odo can choose whatever shape he wants to have, presumably. So like it is a masculinity thing in the purest metaphor of it, which is like, the way that everybody constructs their gender is in part a matter of like one's own agency once you have an awareness of that. And like Odo is reproducing the images of the people who studied him because he like yearns to be a part of a society and like accepted in that way or seen as powerful in the way that they were powerful. He's choosing to appear masculine. He's choosing to have his hair look a certain way. And we see him start to deconstruct like, well, why was that my decision? And why do I want to look the way that I do? And who am I actually? And yeah, that I think adds to what you were describing about this being like a queer romance moment where Odo's sort of confronting like, well, how do I want to express who I am and who am I? And he like breaks down so that he can rebuild that, which is really cool.
Because you think about it, he could spend the whole day, as the liquid form and just become corporeal when he needs to. But he would make other people around him uncomfortable, and he wouldn't be able to fit in the way he wants to. The gender metaphor is all there, baby. It's freaking bright and shining. So even though this is an episode technically about a man and a woman, there is like a deep romantic queerness to it that I latched onto in a big way.
100%.
This is an A tier episode, if not an S tier episode.
Yeah, it's an A. I think it's an A.
It's an A because the B plot is stupid.
And we didn't even talk about like Bashir going around with all the grumpy diplomats who, by the end of it, they're like, "I love this guy. He saved us. He's really awesome." Cool. Which was kind of a nothing plot, but it was kind of fun.
Yeah, so this is an A. You gotta have a good A and a B to get a Chatzums S, I think.
Yeah,
or
I think so too.
As we'll talk about later, what if you didn't have a B plot? Let's get there.
Yeah, just no B. All A, no B. That's what you need to do.
Next is 118 Dramatis Personae, which is, to me, an important episode because this is the time when the actors on DS9 realize we don't have to play everything so flat and neutral. That's how Star Trek works. A lot of people tend to play it like that. But now that we're getting more comfortable with our characters and being a little bit weirder with them, we are coming into them in a big way. So basic premise, a Klingon finds his way onto the ship and he survived a mutiny, and with him also was this, I think they call it like a light or some sort of matrix or something. Basically, he brings on
telepathic matrix, something like that.
He brings on something that puts into their minds the desire to recreate the mutiny that he left. And so everybody except for Odo, because this is like a little stretch of Odo episodes. It's so fun. Becomes hyper paranoid to the point where Kira is willing to mutiny on DS9 against Cisco, and we're recruiting different people to our sides, and it is up to Odo to realize, wait a minute, this isn't just normal, the straight people are acting up again. This is like a problem that needs to be solved. And it kind of reminded me of the episode of TNG where everybody notices that time disappeared and Data has to figure out why, because he's the one who lived through it.
Yes.
It has that vibe, and it's a good Odo episode. I think it's otherwise like pretty standard though, but it's like really fun watching people act paranoid.
Yeah, I think what it does for me is there are there are other Star Trek episodes where it's like, oh no, the thing is making us recreate. There was that one, I don't even remember the TNG episode's name, but where it was like the people who died in the reactor, and then Troy and Worf, like somebody was getting really jealous. There's like a relationship thing and a murder or something. And you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I'm trying to find the episode.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't have to remember the exact episode, but Star Trek has done those kinds of things where it's more interested in like the crew being possessed and recreating a very specific thing, or there being agency and identity to the possessor entity, or even like the one where Picard becomes the thing from like the Mayan thing.
Yeah, that like season 7 episode.
Yeah, like they've done that kind of shit before. And what's interesting about this one is it's not really super specific who the mutineers were or who the commander of the ship was or whatever. It's more just like the vibes of mutiny enter into the specific context and reality of DS9 in a way where it's plausible that this could happen. Obviously, you figure out as the episode goes on, like, well, Kira wouldn't actually do this, but all of her like frustrations with Sisko are things she's actually frustrated about.
Correct.
And this is how these characters actually would probably ally themselves if it came to this. And so it's continuing to explore these themes of like, fighting amongst the ranks of people who are trying to build. What does it mean to be a good leader? We see Sisko become kind of this like parody of a bad leader who just wants to play with his clocks all day and have O'Brien solve his problems for him.
Yeah.
But then he gets really violent and upset whenever anybody challenges him. So I think it's a good episode for exploring some of these themes from a darker but still fantastical angle, and also showing the DS9 crew isn't above some of these problems. They have their frustrations and their tensions that if they weren't more careful or more conciliatory than they are, then easily there could be a mutiny that happens on Deep Space Nine. So it was intriguing for that reason, I think.
It explores the possibility that the show doesn't have to take too seriously right now, but could if they wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
In a really fun way. And I cannot shout out enough that like getting the characters to be more heightened like this is good for the actors. Like, play it up so that when you have to dial it back down for normal, you find a more happy medium. And I think it improves the acting in the show.
I agree. Avery Brooks freaking chewing the scenery and being this like larger than life villainous guy is so fun. He's so good at it.
I need that. I need more of that.
Yeah.
Did you catch the Klingon's title? The one who gets onto the ship is a Tokat.
I did not.
Did you also think about... Oh, so you must have not thought about Tokat the Diagnosin from Farscape. A reference that no Farscape fan gets. Well, actually, I don't know. They're weird in a good way. Tokat. This is a like season 2 thing from Farscape that doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. But it stuck in my brain for 10 years.
It matters to me.
It matters to me. Tokat goes... Good times. Quark's a freak. He's sharing some secrets with Odo. He talks about... I wrote Quark's kinky because I think he was like... I don't know. He's something really kinky to Odo, and I liked it. And I thought that was funny. Bashir also actually doesn't get affected by this, so he's like, I don't know how to treat people. I don't know what to do here. He's just kind of there.
He gets affected, but like the way that he's affected isn't as dramatic.
His character doesn't kill anyone. It's like that's...
Yeah, it was a little confusing because like different people are affected differently.
Yes.
For some reason, Dax just arbitrarily becomes really nostalgic.
Yeah.
Which didn't make sense, but that's what the plot needed, I guess. I don't know. It's odd.
When Kira is trying to recruit Dax, it does read to me like she's also flirting with her, which is fascinating. And I'd love to read more about that. I'd like to subscribe to that newsletter. Sisko drawing a clock is funny. Oh, and then I really don't like the very ending here where they get... It's a purple smoke that's in everybody's brains. So they play a loud, high-pitched noise to get the purple smoke out, and they vent it out into the vastness of space.
Yeah, whatever.
And someone's like, it'll dissipate. And I'm like, will it?
Sure. Okay.
Will it? It's not gonna like go onto another ship and do this exact thing. No. Okay.
Right. No. Moving on.
So
yeah,
it's a flat B for me. People are fun on this one.
Yeah, I agree. There's some memes and some fun, but it's a B.
Now you've made it an hour and 38 minutes into TrekChatz, right? Maybe less, depending on how editing works. And you're like, okay, it seems like you guys generally like this episode, this season. In comes in 119 Duet to absolutely slay the competition, destroy your perception of what Star Trek can be, and make you cry like a baby. Let's go. So I was primed for this one. Magellan was the opposite. You did not know when you went into this one that it was good?
I knew that it was good because I saw in your notes you saying, okay, this one's supposed to be good. And I think in the Discord you said something like, whoa, Nick, you weren't wrong.
Yeah, he had told us, yeah.
But otherwise I didn't know anything about it.
We got to be really careful. So I was torn, right? Because I was like, on one hand, I want you to know that it's good so that you're like locked in. But on the other hand, I don't want you to expect it to be good and be disappointed. But like to some people, this is one of, if not the best episode of DS9.
I got to own up to the fact that like the way that I watched it was probably the worst case scenario, which is I was like, okay, I know this one's good and I'm supposed to pay attention to it. And then I fell asleep and I woke up and watched the last 15 minutes.
Good Lord.
I like got all of the resolution and the final twists. And I was like, okay, that was really interesting. I should probably rewatch this one because I know that it's supposed to be good. So then I rewatched it from the beginning, knowing what happens, knowing that I'm supposed to like it. And it was still pretty good. Yeah. But I definitely did not get the untainted, like, wow, first time watching this episode was amazing kind of experience. So I apologize. But
can we just, very sleepy. How about we just give it an S, call it one of the best episodes of Star Trek and not talk about it? How about that's our consolation?
No, we should talk about it. I mean, yes, it is. It is an S tier episode for sure.
Holy shit, dude.
But let's talk about it.
Okay, so there is a Cardassian on board. It's always there's a blank on board. That's every episode of DS9. This time there's a Cardassian on board. He claims his name is Maritza. Maritza was at a labor camp that Kira helped liberate back in the day, and he's come down with this. He has a very bad disease that they're not sure if it's this disease that could be contracted separately or if it's only because of the damage that was done on the labor camp, which would confirm that he was there. He says, I'm just a file clerk. I wasn't there. And then they're like, you were there. And he goes, I'm just a file clerk that was there. I'm not a bad guy. And then they're like, wait, are you actually are you the leader of Auschwitz? And he's like, yeah, I'm the leader of Auschwitz. I'm the leader of the labor camp, guys. I'm glad I did it. And I wish I killed more Bajorans. And they're like, damn, that sucks, dude. We should probably kill you. And he's like, you probably should, huh? And then they're like, you're not the leader. You are a file clerk, and you are so racked with guilt for the crimes that your people committed that you want to be tried as the leader so that they can feel, so that they have to stand witness for their crimes. That's a level of like 6-dimensional mental psychological chess that I never thought. Every single time this episode pulled another twist, I was like, wait, no, and I guessed some of them, but you really can't predict everything that this episode's trying to do minute to minute until it's wrapping up.
It was fun because when I was rewatching it with Amanda and one of our roommates, and it was that stretch of the episode where he's like, yeah, I actually am the bad guy and I loved killing all those people, and both of them are like, this guy sucks, wow, this guy's fucking awful, what an evil guy. And I'm sitting there over there like, oh, I know what's really going on. It is, can you help me understand? I understand why he wanted them to believe that he was
the guy,
whatever his name is. It's not Gul Dukat because that's a different guy.
It's another Gul.
It sounds something like that.
Yeah.
I know why he wanted them to believe, because he is, like you said, racked with guilt. He's traumatized from all of the stuff that he was like witness to or proximate to. He has all of this guilt, and he wants to be tried as a war criminal because on some level he believes, I think rightly so, since he was sort of a neutral bystander, or not neutral, but like a non-acting bystander in the scenario, he is in part responsible for what happened at this camp. So I get all that. Why did he tell them at the beginning that he was actually himself?
He wanted her to figure it out.
Change his tune again.
He tells Kira, I wanted you to feel smart that you figured it out.
Figured out that he was the bad guy, even though he actually wasn't.
Correct. He was trying to do like a double, triple cross, and instead he was honest from the beginning. Because if he said, "I'm sorry," yeah,
it was sort of a 3-dimensional chess thing of like,
yes,
okay, that makes sense.
If he said, "I'm the guy," if I'm Guldar Heel, then they're like, okay, records say Guldar Heel's dead. You're lying. If he says, I'm the file clerk, and then they're like, wait, but that doesn't make sense because you weren't there. You must be Guldar Heel. And then they go, wait, no, he's dead. No, actually. So that's why he does that.
I see. He didn't expect them to like triple check and find out the actual truth.
Correct. He didn't account for Odo being really smart and for Kira also being
willing to like learn all the information.
Exactly. If Kira had she had let her lesser angels like, you know, take over and she's just let this guy die, then he would have gotten exactly what he wanted. Or he would have gone to trial actually on Bajor and then been like, yeah, sorry, the Cardassians are really evil. We're sorry, and I'll die now. That's what he wanted. So it's morally complicated. I think Visitor's acting here is the best she's ever done. I think the actor who plays Guldar Heel is amazing. The way because it's a banality of evil thing. Like he plays like, and I'm glad I killed all those people because I was the best leader of any camp you've ever seen. And it's like, if we are to follow the line and say that this is, you know, Nazis, that's like the clearest parallel. We're literally saying labor camps. Most Nazi leaders historically weren't like, you know, they were like happy with it and they said, I did a good job. So he's like playing the role of it, but it still feels very like fake almost. It's like
it's very theatrical. Yeah, exactly.
And that's why you're supposed to be like, are people really that genuinely evil? And at the end of the day, the moral of the episode is really like, there are still people who care even amongst the most evil of empires. There were always people who care. And it's up to us, again, speaking of Kira pushing into the future, to end the conflict, to end the future of this conflict, we need to start forgiving people and start letting people live their lives and not just keep on becoming these martyrs back and forth and killing people back and forth.
Right. Yeah, it's such a huge episode for her to, because like, you know, whatever, does he deserve forgiveness? I think that's an interesting conversation, which is separate from what the episode is about.
Yeah.
Because what the episode is about is, what does it do for Kira or mean for her to choose to forgive him?
Yeah.
It means, it's like a big part, again, of her development as the leader that Bajor needs, or at least the leader that she needs for herself, is like, well, we need to be willing to recognize that individual people made individual mistakes in the context of this larger systemic disgusting thing where there were also really bad actors driving it. And that's a level of nuance that Kira is ready to hold that she wasn't necessarily ready to hold even at the beginning of the episode, which is a cool thing to witness. And yeah, the guy playing Maritza, when you're watching, the thing that I did get out of my odd viewing of it that I think was beneficial is watching the episode through knowing who he really is, because the actor adds in these little moments where he'll go on his super evil tirade and then someone leaves the room and he looks exhausted and sad that he had to play this evil character. He looks guilty about all the things that he said. And it's these little moments that you don't clock when you don't know what's going on, but when you understand that he's putting the mask on and taking it off, it's all there. And it's a really, really cool thing to be able to see through when you understand what it is that he's doing.
I have so many more thoughts. I'm like, I'm bursting with them. I love to hear that Sisko wants to explore every single possibility that this guy is not who Kira says he is. This is like a great moment for Sisko, and she's like, he's a war criminal. We should be trying him and probably getting him killed. I'm resisting every urge to strangle him. And he's like, what if he's not? What if he's actually a file clerk who didn't do anything wrong? Then do you try him for lying to you? Like someone else says that, like, are you really going to try our guy for lying to you? I think Gul Dukat comes up in this episode.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You guys want to do that? I really hope. And then someone later says, I would hate the bitterness. I would hate the bitterness between Cardassia and the Federation to grow, suggesting that like underneath everything happening on DS9, there is a worsening relationship between Cardassia and the Federation, not an improving one. So to kill somebody like this, even if it was Goldar Heel, is like bad for relations. So Cisco is dealing with that as well. Like, I don't want to just say these things because I have to be careful. I think that Kira is also trying to like manage this because on one hand, yes, she wants to be right and do the job that she has in the Federation, but also she says, I'm asking for all of the Bajorans who can't ask to let a Bajoran do this. She feels this duty to the people who died, to the people who couldn't fight, the old people who were killed because they couldn't work anymore at the labor camp. You have to let me do this. I don't want to. She's not like actually thrilled about it, but like, yeah, I have to. Darheel, aka Maritza, continuing to play the role. She says, did you notice the people that were harmed like next door to you? And he says, I vaguely recall hearing a scream from time to time, which made me think a lot about that movie Zone of Interest from last year, which is about actually Auschwitz and like people who the leader of the camp living next to it, and what he had to deal with. And what's so brilliant about that movie is that you're always hearing the Holocaust happen, you're never seeing it. So there was that potency. There's, like I said, the building of enmity between Cardassia and the Federation, and then the best line in the episode, and the one that gets put on Twitter like every 6 months: nothing justifies genocide, says Kira. And then he says, what you call genocide, I call a day's work. Cold, ice cold, dude. Are you kidding? You can't write lines like that. What are you talking about? Are you talking about Cardassia or are you talking about something else? I smell the real world parallels here, Star Trek writers. I smell them, and they're good. Nothing justifies genocide.
And it's really chilling when you consider that line, I call a day's work, is coming from someone who, like, the guilt that he holds, the reason that he's talking so much about the efficiency of the camp is because that was the role that he played in it, as like a clerk and a file keeper. He wasn't there killing people, but he was greasing the wheels of the machine and clocking in and clocking out and doing a day's work, doing a desk job. And then now he's like teaching at a Cardassian university or whatever about how to do the filing. And that's just such a fascinating and haunting thing for him to say. Because you think he's saying it in like I love the smell of murder in the morning kind of way. But what he's really saying is, I was doing the most boring job on paper that you could do. I was doing it in service of truly evil ends. Exactly. It was my day's work to perpetuate genocide. And to speak on some of the stuff that you were saying earlier about like Cisco and his position in this, in contrast with Kira's, there's that great scene at the beginning where Kira is explaining, like, you don't understand what I saw when I went to liberate this place, and why this is affecting me so much. And Cisco is like a little cold and detached about it. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want you talking to this guy. I'm going to go do it myself. And so this episode has more of Cisco being the voice of like centrist wisdom, which I have some feelings about overall. And I think the show is moving in the direction that we were worried about, where it's going to be like, ugh, extremism. Come on.
That's no violence?
Good. No, don't do it like that, guys. Come on. Processes and bureaucrats and whatever. But I do think that this episode shows a little bit of his hypocrisy, or like him just being too distant from the situation, because Kira's speaking from the perspective of having witnessed these things and is going through a really hard experience, which is like, when she was a resistance fighter, she didn't have to stop and think about if she was like fighting the bad guys in the right way. She was just fighting the good fight.
It felt right to her.
Right. And now she's in a position where she's being asked to treat the situation the way that Cisco does, who is a totally detached third party who had no firsthand experience in it whatsoever. Kira is being expected to behave and lead the way that he does, having gone through this from a much different perspective and circumstance. So yeah, it's just such a great, they like contrast each other really well, and this show is is a good show.
There were multiple checkpoints here where I was like, this could be a very simple twist, 1 or 2 twists down, and I would accept the episode as it is. Like, for example, I thought he is the file clerk and he wants people to believe he's the war general because he's a nationalist who wants a hero's death. He's like, I didn't do enough war crimes, but I loved my nation so much that I want to be treated like him. What we actually get is it's a common it's a common philosophical concept when we talk about World War II, which is the idea of no good Nazi. Was there somebody were there morally good Nazis? You look at Schindler's List. Oskar Schindler was a Nazi. Go watch that movie if you want to hear about this concept a little bit in more detail. It's very sad. And so at the end of the day, is this man a good person because he wants to die to make his country suffer? But he also worked for them, but he was a file clerk. So like, how much does it matter? And where do we draw that line? I think this is like the core of the moral difficulty for Kira. It's like, I was just saying earlier, when does Kira get more power to determine the fate of the Bajoran people? And it's like, it's kind of already happening. In minor ways, in like little, first season of Star Trek ways. But yeah, the real tragedy of it is that this episode does not have a happy ending at all. He begs her to send him out to trial to be killed, and she says, what you're asking for is another murder, which, getting back to the core of the metaphor, somebody has to stop killing for the conflict to truly end. So she says, I'm not going to do it. We're going to take you out, and we're going to let you out and try you as normal or let you free. And then you forget that there was another Bajoran man who knew about this and was mad that Kira didn't kill him sooner. And he does the job himself. He kills the guy right there in front of everybody and says, it's because he's a Cardassian. And he says, that's reason enough. And then the final episode, the scene of the episode is her saying, no, it's not. It is not enough for him to just be a Cardassian. Him being a file clerk, him doing all this stuff and this betrayal was not justification to kill him, no matter how much we wanted to or thought we should have.
Yeah.
Bleak ending.
Yeah. And it, raises the question also, I think, of like how brave of an attempt to redeem Cardassian society is this from him? Because it's like, he wants people who need to be tried, but he's essentially trying to commit suicide by Federation imprisonment. And what Cardassia needs is people like him who believe the way that he does, who had his experiences, to be more vocal about this, instead of just kind of like hoping that it'll get figured out if I like pretend to be the bad guy. Cardassian society needs you to get out there and like say this stuff and really, really put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. But obviously that's a very hard thing, a very scary thing to do. And he just wasn't able to do it that way, which is part of the tragedy, I think.
Like, would his message have been as effective if he just said, I'm a file clerk who worked at this camp and I want to be tried to speak out against the Cardassian people? Right. I don't think so, right? People would be like, okay, who the fuck are you? You're going to die for this. Oh, well, no one cares. We're going to keep doing what we do. So, you come to the end of the episode and you almost empathize with him. You're like, I understand why you chose to do this. Yeah. And I still don't know if it was the most admirable thing you could have done. Yeah. Sad. Freaking sad, man.
Yeah.
But good TV. Really, really good TV. And like so simple, right? Most of this episode is in his jail cell. Wild.
Yeah.
So D or C? What do you think? That's the highest. Now. That's an S tier right there.
Come on now.
And let's pivot. Let's take it home with episode 20 of season 1. Another heavy one. It's In the Hands of the Prophets. Did you think that we were going to chill out after that one? The answer is no.
No.
Not at all. No. We have other systemic issues to deal with. In this case, O'Brien's enjoying his big Jumja stick and talking with Keiko, who just got back from her little field trip. And now that she's back,
I wanted to eat one of those. They look good.
They're like a giant lollipop. They look so good.
Yeah.
Keiko's back and she's teaching the kids about the stable wormhole and how it was created and what it does. And a religious woman who is in the running, a Bajoran woman who's in the running for Kai, comes into the back of the class and says, don't you think you should be teaching them about like the Bajoran gods who are real and did everything that you're saying? And you go, oh God, it's creationism versus evolution. Oh,
yeah, a little Ghost Monkey Trial kind of action here. I love it.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but then we kind of like start to ramp up the intensity. This is what I think is brilliant about this episode, is it doesn't seem like it's that intense. You're like, okay, they disagree. Keiko's very firmly like, we should be teaching them science. This is just this. This has no modern day parallels. It's not prescient at all. And then the school is bombed. And you're like, what? The school is bombed by who? And you realize that O'Brien has been working with another Bajoran woman and named, I believe, Sina, and Neela, thank you. Sorry, Seela's from TNG. That's another character. Neela's been working with the woman, with the religious woman, and they have this plan about another guy who wants to be Kai. This is all so that they can assassinate him and that she can ascend to the rank of Kai. This is religious extremism, the episode. I think where it does become prescient is not only in the bombing of the school, but also remembering today, not just about like creationism, but like gender studies, stuff like heliocentrism, as Jake points out, back in way back, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But you literally, there are like laws being passed now that you can't teach gender studies in the UK anymore because they don't want kids to know about it.
Critical race theory in the US or
bingo, all of these things that you're like, wait, they make laws so that kids can't learn about these things, so that when they get older and they start to question them, they go, this doesn't match with what I was taught in school. I can't be real.
Right.
And you realize how powerful it is to manipulate kids like that.
Yeah. As a teacher,
please give me this perspective. I'm happy to hear it.
I really appreciated this episode and the way that it approached this storyline, partly as like, there was the element of it that spoke to my kind of like teenage atheist angsty heart of like, yeah, fuck those religious people who think that evolution's not real. They're so dumb. But it does that plot in a way that's a lot more mature and nuanced, and speaking to why it is that we have these sorts of debates. It's not really a debate about genuine belief. Maybe, what's her name? The villain in this one? Vedic wins.
There
right?
you go. Yeah.
Vedic wins. Like maybe she's a true believer who believes in the prophets, but regardless of that, it benefits her political station and her quest for power for people to believe that. And so when we have these arguments about like what's taught in schools and who's teaching it and why, and you hear agents of the status quo say, well, why are you teaching it that way? That isn't right, or that isn't in line with our religion or whatever. It's not really a matter of ignorance. It's a matter of power. And who does it benefit to continue to teach things the way that they're taught? Who does it benefit for all these Bajoran children to believe that there are like, deities in the wormhole? It benefits people like Vedic Winds, who is then going to use that belief in order to consolidate power and justify all of the things that she chooses to do. Who does it benefit in the US to say, well, you're not allowed to teach critical race theory, or you're not allowed to talk about trans identity in the classroom? It benefits the people who are currently holding power in those places and whose power is predicated on people like believing that those things are threats to their safety or threats to the like kind of stability of their lives, which is just, it's bullshit. It's not true, but it's the kind of bullshit that keeps the powerful powerful. And I thought that this episode did a really good job of exploring that and putting that on display. And I really like the conversation that Sisko has with his son.
I was going to say this.
Where Jake is sort of like, well, it's so stupid. Like, why do people believe this? And Sisko's like, well, there's more to it than that. Like, people are allowed to have their beliefs, and we have to make sure that this is a place where everybody can believe the things that they genuinely want to believe. But there's a little more to it than that. It's not just a matter of belief.
It's not. He also says it's not. It's actually important to allow room for people to discuss religion in the world, in history, and how it affects people. Maybe we need to reconsider how people teach faith on DS9. But at the end of the day, DS9 is like a microcosm for our society. It's like, what if this was small? Our world was only like 10,000 people, and how would they deal with that? Well, the fundamentalist Christians would say, you're taking this out of you're adding this to your curriculum, or I'm taking my kids out. Very simple. It happens in real life all the time. It's sad, and it's real. And so Cisco has to be their like good dad and be like, you shouldn't be hating them. You should hate religious fanatics who are violent and who refuse to accept any other, points of view. But like religious people who believe differently than you and I, Magellan, live among us and like go to the same stores that we do the same things that we do. The reason our society works is that we make people not, you can't talk about that stuff out loud all the time. You have spaces where you can, right? We go to church to be able to feel that thing. And, from the religious side, I even see this point that like, we should be allowed to teach our kids this, but not in school. School is not for that. And that's kind of where like the United States has gone in the last like 30, 40 years. We've started in some ways realized, at least with that specific issue, creationism, we're going to teach evolution in school. But there's always another battle. There's always another thing that the Christian right are going to be like, well, but
sure. And even that is still like resisted and fought against and talked about as like, well, that's not really real. So
isn't that sad though? Yeah. Like this episode came out in like 1993. And
yeah, it's very sad. The Scopes monkey trial was in the 1920s. Like, yes, this has been an issue for a long time. Yeah. It's fucking frustrating.
Yeah, like this and Duet just made me very, very sad because Duet is like, yeah, we still have irreconcilable conflicts that people are never going to be able to like, reach the end of because there's always going to be hate in the world, even though we can keep working against that. And then this is like, we're going to keep telling our teachers what to teach our kids and what not to teach our kids, just like we did in the 1900s, just like we did in the 90s. It's really sad. So some notes. I really liked, Jake specifically doing the work of comparing it to Copernicus and being like, didn't they do this thousands of years ago? And Cisco's like, yes, it's still happening. And I might as well be telling the listener, like, yes, it's been happening since like the 1100s or whatever.
Look out the window, everybody. Right.
Exactly. I noted in my God, I can't believe I wrote this in my notes. I'm not even kidding. Early on in my notes, O'Brien has this plucky Bajoran assistant. I really like whenever she appears. I hope she becomes a whole character at some point. I owned myself within this episode. Because she's been around. She's been in like earlier in this season. We've seen her.
She was in Duet. Yeah.
Yep. I thought it was fascinating that the Jumja Sticks thing comes back, and that's when Miles gets involved. Is they're like, we don't sell them to you because you don't believe in God. It's like, oh God, this is what I talk about, where DS9 is a microcosm, is like, it instantly affects our characters when something like this happens. Love that. Love Odo investigating the murder in this and having no sensitivity training whatsoever, because they're trying to figure out who died in the runabout, and he's like, someone's like, well, what was that guy doing in the runabout at 4 a.m? And he just in the corner goes, apparently getting murdered. Odo, you're awesome.
You can't say that.
You're not supposed to say that, Odo. I wrote BSG could never, when it comes to putting a character that's been in the background into the foreground. Just kidding, because that's like what BSG does a lot, apparently. And then the final conversation between Kira and Cisco is like some of my best. It's like my favorite season ending conversation, because he's like, how are you doing? Are you okay? And Kira says, I haven't seen okay or been okay in what feels like years.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. And she's sad because she wanted to believe in this woman. And she says, I wanted my faith to be as strong as hers. So it's really crushing her that she was an extremist. Because, going back to earlier in the season, like, she wants elders to be able to guide her spiritually and guide the future people spiritually. And they end up being like this sometimes, and that sucks.
Yeah.
And then Cisco wrapping it all up on a beautiful bow is like, but you're here, and that's what matters. And maybe we have made some progress after all. As the final line of a season of Star Trek, that's awesome, guys. You did it.
Yeah.
I really like this one. I think it's an S tier for me.
I'd put it S too.
Yeah.
Very strong ending to the season. They don't normally end Star Trek seasons this strongly, but they did it.
With the back-to-back, the 1-2 punch.
Yeah. So
we've got Bad But Actually Good, If Wishes Were Horses. We've got four B tiers, 3 A tiers, and 2 S tiers. I'd say the season runs the gamut a little bit in quality, but mostly is trending way higher than TNG did. So congrats. Yep. Any other thoughts on season 1 of DS9?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I want the ensemble to matter more. is I think my main critique. I think all the Bajoran Cardassian stuff is fascinating, and the themes that the show is exploring are really powerful. I think I'm missing some of the like variety in meaningful, characterful episodes. We got a lot of great Odo stuff, a lot of great Kira stuff, and that's it. Like I don't know. There weren't like several moments of Cisco, several moments of Dax or Bashir, and maybe and Quark is like a silly little guy, so maybe that's just not what the show wants to do. Maybe it wants to be about the larger themes, but that's like the only thing that I'm really missing at this point. Otherwise, I thought this was a great stretch of episodes.
Yeah, I'd say better than the first half.
Yeah.
And gives me a lot of confidence. Like, this show is really laying that groundwork and saying, hey, we know what we're doing. Let's start cooking slowly. Like, I truly think that while it is somewhat minor in making a minor character like that into a main story plot character was like brilliant and felt like, wow, everything matters. You know, Quark almost becomes the guy in his little plot, and we learn about Odo and his people. We confirm that there are more changelings. Like, this is how you do world building. It's slow and gradual and meaningful. Really impressive stuff. Expectations of season 2? Anything you know about or are looking forward to?
I know we're gonna get more Klingon stuff. So I was kind of like, what's up with that Klingon? I guess this isn't related to any Klingon stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'd love to see more weird stuff in the Gamma Quadrant. Like weird gonzo shit, not like dudes with makeup on.
Yeah, I'd love that. Love more of that. No more Forever Wars. Or if you are, then make them weirder. We're not getting Worf yet. We're very far away from Worf, but this season 2 airs during season 7 of TNG. So I'm curious if there's any crossover there. Season 7 of TNG is weird, and I have a feeling this is when they're going to start building the like series long arcs of season 2. Like, now that we've got our characters,
it feels right.
Now that we've got our general characters and premise, let's get some villains. Let's get some bigger Cardassian stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What are we watching next week, Magellan?
Next time, we're returning to our coverage of Xena, Warrior Princess, with 2 episodes of season 1. The 2 episodes are season 1, episode 13, Athens City Academy of the Performing Bards. Okay. And season 1, episode 14, A Fistful of Dinars. First, Athens City Academy of the Performing Bards. When Gabrielle decides to enter a competition at the Athens City Academy of Performing Bards, she encounters another young hopeful who has extraordinary storytelling talents. Could it be Homer or something, maybe? I don't know.
Oh my god, Homer!
That would be great. And then A Fistful of Dinars. Xena searches for the lost treasure of the Sumerians to keep Ambrosia from falling into the wrong hands. Okay.
Fun.
Great.
I want to see Homer. I want to see their version of Homer. I just got, I talked about Emily Wilson's Iliad last week. I got it from my library. I have an ebook of it. So I might start cracking into that for next week.
That's great.
And playing Hades too. Yes, Magellan. I'm done with all my other podcast homework is done. I can play Hades now. Yeah. Dinars, eh? Sorry. Magellan, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on another podcast that I do with my friend Justin called Super Smash Echoes, where we play video games related to the Super Smash Brothers franchise. Super Smash Echoes, check it out. And then you can also read some of my writing on my Substack at notthatmagellan.substack.com. What about you?
You can hear me on a few other podcasts. I'm on the Creature Quorum every other week or so. My friend Six and I are playing through Pokemon Generation 5 and talking about the different settings within. That's at CNImedia.com. You can also hear me on the Garner Wager, which is a storytelling game show review tabletop podcast that comes out periodically. We're trying to get back to a monthly release. We should be soon. That's also at scanamedia.com. And then you can hear me every other month on Talking Marketing, a marketing pod I do for my volunteer job at AMA Boston. That can be found wherever you listen to podcasts. Magellan, you want to do the plug zone this week?
Surely I do. You can get in touch with the show in a few different ways. You can email us at chatspot@gmail.com with questions, comments, concerns, suggestions. If you want to join us for an episode of Xena Warrior Chats Us, you can just let us know over there. Or if you want us to read anything from you on the show, we're always happy to do that as well. So all of that is chatspot@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter/X at chatspod. You can follow us, DM us there if that's your preferred form of communication. We have a YouTube channel, Chats, a television podcast on YouTube, where we post audio versions. This is an audio version, but you know what I'm saying. It's a video, but it's just the audio of Chats Television Podcast, all these episodes, if you prefer to listen on YouTube. And we also maybe sometimes put shorts on there. Alan edited a little funny edit recently of some Ed and Eddie sound effects in a Xena episode, which was pretty silly. So you can find that on the YouTube channel, Chats Television Podcast on YouTube. You can rate us wherever you find us and share us as well. That's super helpful. Wherever you listen to podcasts, send that to somebody. Give us the stars or the thumbs or the hearts, whatever that thing is that you can give us. And if you have the money to support us financially, consider doing so at patreon.com/chatspod. $1 a month gets you on our Discord, gets you talking with other listeners about the shows that we watch or other pop culture things. $3 a month gets you twice monthly bonus content. And then $5 a month gets you thanked right here at the end of every episode. Thank you to our $5 patrons, who include Stefan, Six, Noel, Nick of the Brothers in Infinite War, my mom, May Louise, Marcus, Lee, Kyrie, Justin, Jen, Felicia, Emrys, Emily, Arthur, and Amanda. Thank you, folks, for supporting the show. Now, Alan, we like to... of course, also thank you to Camilla Strader for creating our podcast art. Now, Alan, at the end of all these episodes, we like to discuss our chatsums, little things to snack on between now and next time. What is your chatsum for this week?
Golly, I'm glad you asked. I just have a couple quick musical chatsums for y'all. I've been listening to some tunes, specifically the new Childish Gambino album that stealth dropped this week. It's called Atavista, Atavista. It's pretty good. It's very jazzy. It's very experimental, a little bit of electronic inspiration in there. It was a great gym listen. It's about 50 minutes, so it's perfect gym time music. I really like Childish Gambino, and he's the first person I ever saw in concert, so I have that connection. I liked Because the Internet. I like him on Community. I like Camp. I liked Camp. I don't know how much it holds up these days. I've liked a lot of his work, and I think you should check out Atavista if his music is your style. My friend Dreams, Dreamzz, friend of mine, named Shaq, put out another EP. He's a great artist, and you should check his music out. I've recommended him before. His new EP is called Lifesaver, and you should at least cue that up and hit the stream button to give him some support. And last but not least, I still haven't seen Challengers, guys. I don't plan on rushing to see it, but it's one of those things where it's gotten too hyped for me now. Like, I have a Twitter mutual who's seen it 6 times in theaters. This is that Zendaya tennis movie with the two guys,
The throuple, yeah.
The throuple. And I'm happy that people are finding their hyperfixations out there, but when a movie gets that overhyped, I pull back sometimes, and I no longer want to see it. But I have been listening to the soundtrack to it, which is fantastic. It's very, very good working music, if that's what you're looking for. Those are my musical chatsums. I'm in an electronic mood as we segue into summer now. What about you, nice. Marge?
This is a quick little YouTube chatsum. There's a channel. It's D&D related, if that's of interest to you. It's this guy, Zach the Bold, and he's mostly been doing shorts that are sort of like comedic D&D shorts. Here's how the party responds to a dragon.
Oh, I've seen this guy.
Yeah, and they're all pretty well produced. It's the classic thing of it's the same person talking to themselves off camera, yes. And you keep cutting between the same guy in a bunch of different outfits. But he just does these little production touches that make them a slightly better version of that thing. And he recently put out his first longer form video, which I haven't watched yet. It's reacting to the first campaign I wrote, but if his shorts are any indication, that video is going to be good. And it might be your chance to get in on the ground floor of somebody who's about to be the next big D&D YouTuber person, or otherwise the shorts are just really funny and entertaining. So I'd recommend Zach the Bold. Z-A-C-H. Zach
the Bold.
Spelling.
He's been on TikTok for a while, so he's basically been a D&D TikToker for a while.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Our crusty millennial asses are he makes good shorts, and I look on his TikTok and there's 3 times as many over there, but it's not
I believe it. You can't convince me to go to TikTok. Sorry, Zach.
No, you're better off. But yes, I've also gotten recommended his stuff. I think I saw one that was like right at the end of the session, you reveal something and everyone's like, what if we play for another hour? And it was like kind of funny. I enjoy his content as well. I'll give you the thumbs up on that too.
He's got good hair too. Nice hair.
Great hair. What the heck? Come on. Anyways, Magellan, thank you for being the Jake to my Nog. Which one is more offensive? Me calling you African American or me calling you a Jewish stereotype?
Oh my goodness gracious.
Neither. We're just...
I love Nog. I would protect that boy with my life. I want him to be my son.
Okay, you can be the Nog to my Jake then, and I'll be...
Okay, great.
Because the idea of being related to Cisco makes me really happy. And thank you all for listening to TrekChatz. Peace.